A long gray road wound back out of sight. Far away, a figure came slowly down the road, faint and small at first, but growing larger and clearer as it approached. Suddenly, Frodo realized that it reminded him of Gandalf. He almost called aloud the wizard's name, and then he saw that the figure was clothed not in gray, but in white. In a white that shone faintly in the dusk, and in its hand, hello everyone, welcome to Aude and Tulava, where we are walking our way through Tolkien's Legendarium. Today we are finishing up Book 2, Chapter 7, The Mirror of Galadriel. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We have a few of my favorite cover versions linked in the description below, and the channel memberships are open, where you'll get early access to videos if you'd like to support the channel that way. All right, let's dive in. As a reminder, we're picking up right after the company wakes up the morning after arriving in Caras Galadhon and speaking with Galadriel and Celeborn. They remained some days in Lothlorien, so far as they could tell or remember. All the while that they dwelt there, the sun shone clear, save for a gentle rain that fell at times and passed away, leaving all things fresh and clean. The air was cool and soft, as if it were early spring, yet they felt about them the deep and thoughtful quiet of winter. It seemed to them that they did little but eat and drink and rest and walk among the trees, and it was enough. Now, I love how ambiguous Tolkien was about this. He says they stayed some days in Lorien. In a later chapter, we'll get Sam talking about the moon cycle and how he can't quite remember how long they were in Lorien. I just love that you really have to look at Appendix B to see how long they were really in Lorien. They arrived in Caras Galadhon in the evening of January 17th, and they left on February 16th. Frodo and Sam look into the Mirror of Galadriel on the 15th, so essentially they're there for a month. Now, I really see this as an effect of the ring Galadriel wears. It's like when mortals enter the realm of the rings of power, they start to perceive the world the way the elves must. It feels like just a few days, but it's really a month. I know Rings of Power was not everyone's cup of tea, the show this time, but a conversation between Durin the Fourth and Elrond was really, really good. Durin is angry that Elrond hasn't been around enough, and Elrond says, "Has it been 20 years already?" Whatever you think about the show, I thought it was a great way to give the audience an idea of how time passes for an elf. 20 years isn't anything to sneeze at, even for a dwarf, but for Elrond, it just flew by. And that is what the company is getting a small taste of here. The end of the passage really gives us, I think, an insight into Tolkien himself. After all, he does say he considers himself a hobbit in all but stature. He is talking about the entire company, but all they needed was to eat, drink, rest, and walk among the trees. It sounds about as Tolkienian as anything really could be, until you add a pipe to it, and then a lot more. And we start to see the friendship of Legolas and Gimli begin here as well. Legolas was away much among the Galathrim, and after the first night, he did not sleep with the other companions, though he returned to eat and talk with them. Often he took Gimli with him when he went abroad in the land, and the others wondered at this change. Now, I want to postulate just a little bit here. What happened that they started walking around together? I want to hear your thoughts on this kind of below for sure. I think it was Legolas who reached out first. I think while he was blindfolded and he couldn't see and enjoy the woods fully, he understood what they were doing to the dwarves. It was such a horrible experience, he realized he needed to reach out to Gimli and apologize. And since he didn't get to see all of the woods, he would bring Gimli along with him to see it all. Maybe it's a bit misguided because Gimli doesn't really care about the woods, other than, how they can provide kindling for his smithies, but he understands Legolas is trying to bridge the gap and be nice, so he goes along with it. Or do you think it was Gimli who realized it was such a terrible thing for Legolas to not get to see the part of the woods because he didn't get to see that much of Moria? I'm going to stick with Legolas reaching out version. He definitely started to think more about mortality after Gandalf died. Now, as the company continues to process the loss of their friend, they hear the elves lamenting the loss of Gandalf as well. They ask Legolas to interpret for them, but he tells them he doesn't have the skill. Now, this is something I literally just caught, and I'm kind of like freaking out as I write this. What does he mean by the fact that he doesn't have the skill? Here, I think, is a nod to Elfwine. If you've read the first couple of books in History of Middle-earth, you know I probably completely screwed up pronouncing his name, but Elfwine, you know who he is in Tolkien's Legendarium. He's a mariner who found the straight road and made it to Tol Eressëa, just off the coast of Valinor. He essentially gathered the silmarillion from Pengalod of Gondolin. At some point in the history of Middle-earth, which I can't find for the life of me, Elfwine says he wasn't skilled enough to be both a translator and poet. And that is exactly what Legolas is dealing with here. The other elves are singing songs about Gandalf, and while Legolas could technically translate what they're saying, The beauty of it would be completely lost because he wouldn't be able to keep it in meter or rhyme and have it flow the same way that the poem or the song does. Which is also really impressive to think about because Tolkien was both, and he did it well. The ring verse is a perfect example. It flows in rhythm both in the Black speech and in English. I kind of like the little nod here to himself. But not to be stymied, Frodo comes up with a lament all his own, which Sam adds onto. When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away on journey long without a word. From Wilderland to western shore, from northern waste to southern hill, though dragon lair and hidden door and darkling woods he walked at will. With dwarf and hobbit, elves and men, with mortal and immortal folk, with bird on bough and beast in den, and in their own secret tongues he spoke. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh, an old man in a battered hat who leaned upon a thorny staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken on the stone, in Khazad-dûm his wisdom died. The finest rockets ever seen, they burst in stars of blue and green, or after thunder golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers. Now this is, I feel clearly Hobbit meter again, iambic tetrameter, stress on the second syllable and 4 metrical feet in a line, when evening in the Shire was grey. I skipped the little back and forth between Frodo and Sam in the middle and just added Sam's stanza at the end. It's interesting, I don't know what it means, but the rhyming scheme changed from AB, AB to AABB with Sam's lines. I wonder if Tolkien was making a statement about Sam's skill as a poet at this point. I don't know. What I definitely know is the last part is something Frodo wrote in and Sam did not add. I think anytime Sam has something extra to add, it's always Frodo adding it in and never Sam just thinking, whew, man, what I said was awesome. Gotta add that in. Sam held Frodo in such high regard, he would never step on his toes in print. As we continue, we get this short passage giving us a foreshadow of what's to come. One evening, Frodo and Sam were walking together in the cool twilight. Both of them felt restless again. On Frodo, suddenly the shadow of parting had fallen. He knew somehow that the time was very near when he must leave Lothlorien. Here's another place where I feel like Frodo is showing wisdom, possibly a bit beyond what he normally has. The shadow of parting had fallen on him. I wonder where this feeling came from. I doubt it was the ring giving him extra power like in Moria when his sight was increased. It seems more akin to the foresight Aragorn received before they went into Moria about Gandalf's death. I think it's coming from Eru. It's a push, a little bit, as Eru sees what is transpiring outside of Lorien, knowing it's time for the company to begin moving forward towards their goal. I wouldn't put it past Eru to even be kind of guiding Frodo and Sam's steps here to run into Galadriel in a minute. Now, Frodo brings up a question he's asked Sam before. What does Sam think of the elves now that he's seen more of them? I have indeed, said Sam, and I reckon there's elves and elves. They're all elvish enough, but they're not all the same. Now, these folks aren't wanderers or homeless, and seem a bit nearer to the likes of us. They seem to belong here, more even than hobbits do in the Shire. Whether they've made the land or the land's made them, it's hard to say if you take my meaning. It's wonderfully quiet here. Nothing seems to be going on, and nobody seems to want it to. If there's any magic about it, it's right down deep, where I can't lay my hands on it, in a manner of speaking. Sam here is giving us a little lesson on the different types of elves, if you caught it. Most of the elves in Lorien are Sindar or Sindarin elves, who did not make the initial journey west over the Misty Mountains. The first elves Sam met were Noldor, who made this journey to Valinor and then left. That's why Gildor says they are exiles. So if Sam was paying attention to Gildor, he realizes they aren't in their home. Their home is truly Valinor, but the Sindar elves stayed. They are home. So I can see him feeling they belong there more than hobbits even do. They've been there a lot longer. Add on to that the difference in the nature of elves compared to men and hobbits. Elves are tied to Arda, to the world. Once it dies, so will they. But men and hobbits, well, we don't know what happens to their spirits. So in a way, the land just kind of made them, or the elves, like Sam says. And I love how Sam recognizes the magic in the land. He knows it's down deep. It's baked into the woods. It's the work of Nenya, Galadriel's ring. He doesn't know that, of course, and even when her ring is revealed to Frodo in a minute, Sam still doesn't see it. And even though Sam laments, it's not quite like the magic he was hoping to see, things like Gandalf's fireworks. I still have lots of respect for Sam for recognizing what's around him when probably a lot of other people don't. Even though Sam wants to see more magic and stay in Lorien, he recognizes they need to get on with the quest. It's the job that's never started as takes longest to finish, as my old gaffer used to say. And I don't reckon that these folk can do much more to help us, magic or no. It's when we leave this land that we shall miss Gandalf worse, I'm thinking. I'm afraid that's only too true, Sam, said Frodo, yet I hope very much that before we leave we shall see the Lady of the Elves again. Galadriel shows up exactly then. She beckons them to follow her. Turning aside, she led them towards the southern slopes of the hill of Caras Galadriel, and passing through a high green hedge, they came into an enclosed garden. No trees grew there, and it lay open to the sky. The evening star had risen as was shining with white fire above the western woods. The evening star in Tolkien's Legendarium essentially turned into our Venus. But what's more important is the fact that the evening star is the star of Arendelle. Arendelle standing on the prow of Vingalot with the Silmaril, stolen from the crown of Morgoth by Beren and Luthien themselves, on his brow. We'll see Arendelle come up again in this chapter and next chapter as well. He played an important part in the history of the elves and is continuing to help the world out today, just in a different way. Now Galadriel offers a look into the mirror for Frodo. Frodo, wondering what he will see, gets this answer. Many things I can command the mirror to reveal, she answered, and to some I can show what they desire to see. But the mirror will also show things unbidden, and those are often stranger and more profitable than things which we wish to behold. What you will see if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell. For it shows things that were, and things that are, and things that yet may be. But which it is that he sees, even the wisest cannot always tell. Do you wish to look? This is just another example of elves saying both yes and no in response to a question. But her response leads to an interesting kind of question. Again, how can you possibly use what it shows you to affect change in a positive way? It's kind of the classic paradox of knowing the future, right? If you know a bad thing is going to happen, but you try to stop it, will you actually stop it, or will you just make it happen in a different way because it was always going to happen? What benefit could they get from looking into the mirror? Well, either way, questions be darned. Sam wants to look, so let's see what he sees. There's only stars, as I thought, he said. Then he gave a low gasp, for the stars went out. As if a dark veil had been withdrawn, the mirror grew gray and then clear. There was sun shining, the branches of trees were waving and tossing in the wind. But before Sam could make up his mind and what it was that he saw, the light faded, and now he thought he saw Frodo with a pale face lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff. Then he seemed to see himself going along a dim passage and climbing an endless winding stair. It came to him suddenly that he was looking urgently for something, but what it was he did not know. Like a dream, the visions shifted and went back, and he saw the trees again. But this time they were not so close, and he could see what was going on. They were not waving in the wind, they were falling, crashing to the ground. "Hi!" cried Sam in an outraged voice. But now Sam had noticed that the old mill had vanished, and a large red brick building was being put up where it had stood. Lots of folk were busily at work. There was a tall red chimney nearby. Black smoke seemed to cloud the surface of the mirror. So what good was Sam looking into the mirror? What good was it for Sam anyway? He sees some things we all know will come to be true during the scouring of the Shire and in outskirts of Mordor, but did it do anything for him? Did he become wiser for it? I don't really know. The only thing I can think of is his final response to what he sees in the mirror. Sam sat on the ground and put his head in his hands. "I wish I had never come here, and I don't want to see no more magic," he said, and fell silent. After a moment, he spoke again, thickly, as if struggling with tears. "No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all," he said. "But I hope I do get back someday. If what I've seen turns out true, somebody's gonna catch it hot." Maybe he was more emotionally prepared to see what he sees when he gets back to the Shire. I guess that could be, I don't know, maybe a side effect. But I think the most important thing this did for him was help him learn what was important. How to stick with what he knew he had to do, no matter what. It gave him the fortitude to move on. Maybe it gave him the fire to get back to the Shire to make sure everything was all right, or at least to put it right. Other than that, I'm not sure what that could have done for him. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear some others' ideas. Now, before we get into Frodo's vision, I want to encourage you, please read this part out loud to yourself. Maybe even purchase Hammond and Skull's Reader's Companion. There is so much here, and I can't read all of it as, you know, the estate isn't always happy with people who read the book out loud. But here we go. A long gray road wound back out of sight. Far away, a figure came slowly down the road, faint and small at first, but growing larger and clear as it approached. Suddenly, Frodo realized that it reminded him of Gandalf. He almost called aloud the wizard's name, and then he saw that the figure was clothed not in gray, but in white. In a white that shone faintly in the dusk, and in its hand there was a white staff. Then there was a pause, and after it many swift scenes followed that Frodo in some way knew to be part of a great history in which he had become involved. The mist cleared and he saw a sight which he had never seen before, but knew at once: the sea. Darkness fell, the sea rose and it raged in a great storm. Then he saw against the sun, sinking blood red into a rack of clouds, the black outline of a tall ship with torn sails riding up out of the west. Then a wide river flowing through a populous city, then a white fortress with 7 towers, and then again a ship with black sails, but now it was morning again and the water rippled with light, and a banner bearing the emblem of a white tree shone in the sun. A smoke as of fire and battle arose, and again the sun went down in a burning red that faded into a gray mist. And into the mist a small ship passed away, twinkling with lights. It vanished, and Frodo sighed and prepared to draw away. So Frodo gets another vision of Gandalf here, this time as what he's being reborn as. I'm not sure exactly how this helps him. Maybe it was to show him on the off chance that Frodo had figured out and kind of bolster his spirits, even though he had to, keep moving forward without Gandalf. Maybe. I never really put together everything else he sees here until working through the book alongside Hammond and Skull. It makes sense that the ships sailing out of the west after the sea raged in a massive storm is the Elendili, the Elendil's people coming from Numenor during the fall. Osgiliath is most likely the populous city with a river running through it, and the white fortress with 7 towers is Minas Tirith. The ships with black sails will be the visions moving to the future and seeing Aragorn's ships arriving at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. And the small ship passing away twinkling with lights is most likely Frodo and Bilbo's ship passing into the west. It's like Frodo's getting a quick history lesson in an attempt at comfort here. But what if the mirror is acting like a Palantir? Acting just like the Palantir Sauron has? So hear me out. We learn much later that Sauron shows Denethor the ships with black sails coming up the river, and it fills Denethor with despair. What if the same thing is happening to Sauron, but he knows what those things actually mean? The mirror is showing Frodo exactly what the enemy is saying, but not ending with the despair, but with hope. Is Arrow trying to tip the scales, maybe? Is the magic of the mirror preparing Frodo for what he sees next? He sees the lidless eye, searching for him. The first thing to note is the evil eye of Sauron is shaped like a cat's. Tolkien doesn't like cats, so you can pretty much always assume that when a cat is mentioned, it's evil. Side note. But as Galadriel lets Frodo know she is a closed book to their enemy, and we see Arendelle show up again. She lifted up her white arms and spread out her hands toward the east in a gesture of rejection and denial. Arendelle, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays glanced upon a ring upon her finger. It glittered like polished gold overlaid with silver light, and a white stone in it twinkled as if the even star had come down to rest upon her hand. Frodo gazed at the ring with awe, for suddenly it seemed to him that he understood. Yes, she said, divining his thought, it is not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond could not do so. But it cannot be hidden from the ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. Verily, it is in the land of Lorien upon the finger of Galadriel that one of the 3 remains. This is Nenya, the ring of adamant, and I am its keeper. Even though Galadriel says the ring bearer and one who sees the eye can perceive the elven rings, I like to think it makes a difference that the Star of Arendelle showed through the gem on the ring. It probably doesn't, but that's right up here. But I do wonder what she means about the ring not being hidden from the ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. Does it have to be both things, or could it just be the ring bearer who hasn't seen the eye, could see the ring? What about someone who just saw the eye but isn't the ring bearer? Or is it like a qualification thing? Only ring bearers could have seen the eye, so they're the ones who can see the ring. A lot of unanswered questions in this video, sorry about that. Tolkien just wrote in so many levels to everything, and unfortunately didn't get to finish and publish everything, so I'm sure we're missing out on some of his hints and layers. What Galadriel says afterwards, though, is immensely important. He suspects, but he does not know, not yet. Do you not see now, wherefore your coming is to us as the footsteps of doom? For if you fail, then we are laid bare to the enemy. Yet if you succeed, then our power is diminished, and Lothlorien will fade, and the tides of time will sweep it away. We must depart into the west, or dwindle to a rustic folk of dell and cave, slowly to forget and to be forgotten. This is the epitome of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If the enemy wins out, he will see all that she has done and be able to destroy the elves. If Frodo succeeds and destroys the One Ring, her power will be diminished and she will no longer have the power to keep Lorien the way it is. We can assume then that Lorien was not a single working of magic, but a constant effort of upkeep. And that effort cannot be kept up as the power of her ring is tied to the power of the One Ring, as techniques were used to make it that were learned from Sauron. Even though she admits that she wishes the ring was simply never made, she understands and accepts her fate and knows that it must be done. The ring must be destroyed. But what if it didn't have to be destroyed? What if Galadriel was given the ring and used its power? She could keep Lorien going and not have to fear Sauron destroying her work. We all know her little monologue from the Jackson movies. It's iconic. And we see the aftermath of it, but I don't think it could fully convey what happened. She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore there issued a great light that illuminated her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measure and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. I passed the test, she said. I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel. It's a beautiful and sad picture of someone who seems to only want to continue helping out her subjects. She wants to provide a beautiful place for them to live, a place with a small memory of the two trees to share with those who never got to see the trees. But what does it mean for her to pass the test, diminish into the west? Okay, short history lesson. Galadriel was born in Valinor. She followed Feanor's group and left Valinor, not a part of, but separate from. She participated in the first kinslaying, albeit unknowingly, sort of. Once Morgoth was defeated, she refused the clemency of the Valar and stayed in Middle-earth, as she wanted a kingdom of her own to rule. That's important. She refused the clemency. But she also knew evil was still in the world. She spent thousands more years fighting Sauron. Even though she didn't necessarily know that Anatar was Sauron, she never trusted Anatar. She's now accepting the clemency of the Valar. She knows she is helping Frodo. She is doing her part to defeat evil, like Arendelle, though not kind of as epically. She will help destroy the ring in the way that she can. She will take part in destroying her own power, forfeit the kingdom she built, gain humility, and return to the place she was born. She will accept the Valar's authority. She passes the test of temptation, unlike Saruman. As they leave the mirror, Galadriel and Frodo talk of wisdom and power. She explains Frodo saw her ring because as the ring bearer, his sight has grown keener. But it seems Sam was sitting aside during the whole conversation, feeling a bit bewildered. She asks if he saw her ring. No, lady, he answered. To tell you the truth, I wondered what you were talking about. I saw a star through your fingers, but if you'll pardon my speaking out, I think my master is right. I wish you'd take his ring. You'd put things to rights. You'd stop them digging up the gaffer and turning him adrift. You'd make some folk pay for their dirty work. Sam is a simple hobbit, not stupid. He just wants to see the people and things he loves put to right. The things he saw in the mirror are likely haunting him. His gaffer's hole dug up, home destroyed. But as we saw back in the Shadow of the Past, Galadriel understands how the ring would get to her. Like with Gandalf back then. She wants to do good. Sam thinks she would make the bad folks pay. I would, she said. That is how it would begin. But it would not stop with that. Alas, we will not speak of it. Let us go. Letting Tolkien's words speak for themselves seems like a great way to finish up this chapter. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Next week, we'll start the company's farewell to Lorien. Until next time, always remember, out in Tulva, they shall come again.